Hello and welcome back. For this video we're going to show how to divide by polynomials, specifically using long division. Here's a couple of steps you need to keep in mind. You've got to make sure that you order the polynomial in standard form, and if you happen to be dividing by something by a binomial or larger, in other words not a monomial, you got to make sure that you fill in the missing degree terms with 0 placeholders. Then you go ahead and divide the polynomial. If there happen to be any remainders left, you just add or subtract them to the end depending on what the sign of the number is. But you write them as a fraction, and the numerator will be the remainder and the denominator will be the divisor of whatever you're dividing by. For our first example here, we've got 4x cubed plus 8x squared plus 10x all divided by 2x. Now I'm going to show it in the long division form. In the long division form, it doesn't matter if you have a monomial or a binomial or something larger. You always look at the first term, and that would be this number here. And you're going to ask yourself, what do you have to multiply 2x by to make it look like 4x cubed? So in other words, 2x times what equals 4x to the third? And some people will know that it's just 2x squared, so we'll write our 2x up here. Another way of doing this would be to take your 4x cubed and place it over 2x and then divide. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and x to the third over x to the first leaves you with x to the second. And then you're just going to multiply. 2x squared times 2x leaves you with 4x to the third. And then subtract like you normally would. You end up with a 0. You bring down your 8x squared, and you repeat the process. What do you have to multiply 2x by to get 8x squared? And it would be a positive 4x. So plus 4x, and then multiply. 4x times 2x gives you 8x squared. Subtract, got a 0. Bring down your 10x. And what do you have to multiply 2x by to get 10x? And it's going to be a positive 5. So plus 5, and 5 times 2x gives you 10x, and your remainder ends up being 0. For our next example, we're going to divide by a binomial. But we're going to do the same thing as before. We're going to only look at the first term, which is x, and how many times it goes in x squared. And x goes in x squared x times, or x times x is x squared. And then we're going to take this x that's on top, and we're going to distribute it to both of these terms. We don't have to worry about the second number. It's going to take care of itself through a subtraction. So x times x is x squared, and x times -1 is negative x. And then when you go to do your subtraction, you got to make sure you put these in parentheses, because 2 minus a negative 1x is really a 3x. And since I only have a monomial here and I'm dividing by a binomial, I got to bring my next number down, so I have a binomial to divide into. And we look at the first number again. We only want to know how many times do I have to multiply x to make it look like 3x. And that would be a positive 3. And we're going to take that 3 and distribute it to the x. So 3 times x is 3x. And one thing I see a lot of students forget is take this 3 and also multiply it with the -1, which is a -3. Then we put our parentheses, and then we subtract. And we end up with 0, so we have no remainders here. So our final answer ends up being x plus 3. For this next example, we are going to have a remainder, but we're going to focus on the first number here. And what do we have to multiply 2x by to make it look like 2x squared? And it looks like it's just a plain old x. So we're going to put an x right here, and then we're going to distribute. X times 2x is 2x squared, and x times -3 is -3x. And be sure to put parentheses around this before you subtract. 2x squared minus 2x squared is 0, so that drops out of the problem. And then 11 subtracting -3, or 11 minus -3 is plus 3, so you end up with 14x. Bring down your -9 because you got to have a binomial. And now what do we have to multiply 2x by to make 14x? And it looks like a positive 7, so plus 7. And then distribute. 7 times 2x is 14x, and 7 times -3 is -21. Be sure to put your parentheses around before subtracting. 14x minus 14x is 0. -9 minus -21 is really plus 21, and that leaves you with 12. And since I have a monomial left over here, and I'm divided by a binomial, this ends up being my remainder. So what we do with the remainder is we bring it up to the top. It's a positive 12, so we'll put plus. And then we're going to create a fraction, 12 over, and then go back to what we divided by. Our divisor is 2x plus, or 2x minus 3, so we're going to put 2x minus 3 in the denominator, and this whole thing ends up becoming our solution. Sometimes when we divide, we got to make sure that we put things in standard form. So if you look at this right here, it's out of order. It's not in descending degree order. So we have to rewrite it into descending degree order, which would look like this here. We do the same thing with what we're dividing by. Instead of putting 2 plus y there, we're going to rewrite that as y plus 2. And then we proceed to divide. What do we multiply y with to get y squared? And that would be just plain old y. And then distribute. Y times y is y squared. Y times 2 is positive 2y. Parentheses before subtracting. Y squared minus y squared is 0. 5y minus 2y leaves you with 3y. I still have enough room to bring another term down to make a binomial and continue dividing. What do we multiply y by to get 3y? It looks like a positive 3, so plus 3. And then distribute your 3. 3 times y is going to give you 3y, and 3 times 2 is going to give you 6. Again, you have to make sure that this 3 gets distributed to both of these terms, and most common mistake is I see people bring just the 2 down here instead of the 6. So it's 3 times 2, not just 2. Make sure you put parentheses around before you subtract. So 3y minus 3y is 0, and 4 minus 6 is negative 2. Now to do our remainder, since we have a negative 2, we're going to put minus, and then create our fraction. The remainder goes in the numerator, and the denominator gets the divisor of y plus 2. So y plus 3 minus 2 over y plus 2, this whole thing ends up being our quotient or our solution. For our last example, you'll see there's a couple of things that are wrong. First of all, neither of these problems is written in standard form, so we're going to rewrite the highest degree first and lowest degree second. But also this first one here, you'll notice it doesn't have an m to the first power. So what we have to do is put a placeholder 0m to the first when we go to do this problem. If we don't do that, our signs won't come out correctly and our like terms won't match up. Once we got everything filled out correctly, we can start to divide. So what do we multiply 2m by to get 4m squared? And that would be a 2m. And I'm going to put my 2m right here. And then distribute that 2m. 2m times 2m is 4m squared. And don't forget to distribute the 2m to the negative 1. And that will give us a negative 2m. And you can see that because we put this 0m to the first here, we now have a 2m to the second, or 2m to the first to subtract from it. Make sure you put parentheses first and go ahead and subtract. 4m squared minus 4m squared is 0. And then 0 minus negative 2m leaves you with a positive 2m. We bring down our 13. Then we start over again. What do we multiply the 2m by to get 2m? And it looks like a positive 1, so plus 1. And 2m to the 2m minus 1 times 1 leaves you with 2m minus 1, parentheses, then subtract. 2m minus 2m is 0. And then 13 minus negative 1 is a positive 14. And our remainder of positive 14 comes up as plus 14 over, and then we look back at our divisor, 2m minus 1, and that's what goes in our denominator, 2m minus 1 of our remainder. So our quotient ends up being 2m plus 1 plus 14 over 2m minus 1.